Valentine's Day Ghost Story. So me and my boyfriend were fans of nautical history, so we decided to spend our Valentine's Day in 2007 on the Queen Mary. As I'm sure most of you are aware, it's reported to be haunted. There is also kind of the appeal to us, but mostly we have BAs and European history, so it's cool to us in general. Anyways, we got a historical suite, meaning it was mostly like it had been when the ship was commissioned, aside from an old TV. The first night, Valentine's Day, we stayed there. We both woke up to what sounded like the drawers of the built-in dresser being opened and slammed shut repeatedly. We're both not the type to freak out and run, but I can't really say why. We're both so low-key that we just acknowledged that the other was okay and eventually went back to sleep. Mainly because it was truly alarming at the time. Maybe we had just trusted that if we were both okay, then everything was okay too? I don't know. But then, we didn't know the history about the room. The next day we went on the ghost tour. Turns out we were sleeping in the second most haunted room on the ship. The room next door was Churchill's suite, where he planned battles during World War II. While we didn't experience the cigar smell that many have reported seeing in that room, it was still interesting that, without knowing our room was known to have paranormal events happen, we did. We had some really weird camera malfunctions in the engine room as well. Also, creepy aggressive feelings in an old museum room on the ship, which we only found because we kinda tried to get into every unlocked room on the ship. It honestly felt like somebody was creeping up behind our backs, but again, just feelings. So shrug. So that's my V-Day ghost story. Thanks for reading. I'm ready. I'm ready to tell you about my Valentine's night stay at the Hotel Lawrence in Dallas, which is supposedly to be haunted. Now, I've been a fan of the paranormal for some time. I recently worked as a haunted tour guide in downtown Dallas, covering areas such as the Grassy Knoll, Texas School Book Department, etc. One of the locations I stopped at was the Hotel Lawrence, which has at least 4 documented murders, all occurring on the 10th floor, and rooms that you can still stay in. My girlfriend decided to get us a room for Valentine's Day, since it was such a big part of my life at the time. We checked in the hotel, and knew right away that it was more of an antique hotel, rather than a refurbished hotel from the past. The hotel took 10 minutes to arrive. Our room was a smoking room, and our TV was a tube TV with an antenna. We bought snacks, food, and booze. It was Valentine's Day, and proceeded to relax, play music, and enjoy our day. I tried to open a window, but it was locked. I tried removing the lock, but actually removed the window as a fire exit. We joked about it and continued our evening, heading out to eat and later coming home for more drinks and watching Ghost Adventures. In the morning we packed. I was beginning to feel stomach cramps but disregarded it. As we began to head home, my stomach cramps turned to chills, a fever, and soon a headache from hell. I got home and laid down. That night I had to go to work at midnight. As I'm in the shower, I realize I have 3 thin scratches on my torso, 1 on each side of my stomach and 1 on my chest. For the next 2 days, I battled feelings of sickness, mostly stomach, like I was just punched hard, and my girlfriend and I argued almost every night over the smallest of issues. I could not sleep either. Went almost 3 days on about 4 hours total sleep. The headache was just so bad, and the pull string on our center window blinds would always sway alone. Not the other 3 blinds, just 1, which I always would hear hitting the blinds. Then one day it all stopped. The pain, the arguing, the sleepless nights, everything. Almost at a sign of what could happen if I were to mock the paranormal again. Since then I've quit my haunted history tour and vowed never again to stay in a hotel that is haunted. I've had my warning. Fiance's perverted father. I figured I would share some of my experiences as well. A little bit of background information. In 2010, I moved in with my now fiancé. He has lived in this house since he moved down to our city when he was about 8 years old. His father, whom I've never met, died a few years back from a stroke. And now for some of my experiences. A few months after I moved in, around Thanksgiving and Christmas, things started happening. One night, my fiancé and I were having a midnight cigarette and had to lean out of the sliding side door since it was raining. He went to bed first and I was still finishing. I was facing the front windows of the house, and we had a small light on in the kitchen. As I was finishing my smoke, I looked out one of the windows and I swear, I was staring at a figure. There were no features but an outline of a body, and what seemed to be a cane. Now here's the weird part. A few days later, I asked my fiancé if his dad ever used a cane. He told me later in life he did after his first stroke, and asked me why. I wanted to know. Like I said, I never met this man in life. Around the same time, closer to Christmas, we're going to sleep. I had a bunch of papers from class on my nightstand and computer desk. I had heard shuffling, and I am a light sleeper. I lay there trying to figure it out since we had no animals living with us at the time, and there was no vent near the papers. I was exhausted, so I shrugged it off and tried to fall back asleep. It was extremely hot at the time, so I threw the comforter off and had the sheet on me pulled up to my shoulder. I finally got comfortable and was about to pass out when the sheet was yanked down. We were both not moving, so it was not us. Of course, I woke up my fiancé and told him, and he said, yeah, it was probably Dad. I sleep topless, so he made jokes that he was trying to see my breasts. On Valentine's Day last year, I wanted to do something different for my fiancé. I bought a cute see-through dress and cooked dinner for him when he got home from work. I went up behind him, hugged him, and we're talking when all of a sudden, the end of my dress, which was barely covering my bottom, was flipped up onto my back. Of course, I jumped up, and my fiancé asked what was wrong, so I told him. He laughed and said it was definitely his dad. That's all my experiences for now. My house is very unusual, so I'm new to Reddit, and I thought it would be the best place to share my stories. My house is haunted. My family says an old police officer had killed himself in the room that is now my bedroom. I'm just here to share some stories for you. My mom used to talk about how my toys would go off at about 2 a.m. every night when I was younger. She was getting tired of it and told whoever it was to knock it off, and it somehow did. Then it started to work its way downstairs where my gram was kinda skeptical about it, until that happened. My mom also told me that I always would see a man in the windows. One night when one of her friend's sons stayed over, he was staying in her room. She got woken up to him praying in her bed, and asked why he was doing that. He then told my mom that he sees someone just watching her from the edge of her bed, and saw a figure walk into the next room thinking it was my gram, but it wasn't. My mom didn't tell me this story till a few months ago. I was unsure of this house, and sometimes I get the strangest vibes from it. My cats can see it too. They'll just stare at some random area for a good amount of time, meowing or just sitting in silence, and then snap back into reality and walk away. One time, when I went to talk to my mom about something in her room, it is now my bedroom, while she was ironing, and suddenly the twin dolls I had randomly said, "Feed me, mommy!" And that is a normal thing for it to say, but the weird part was that it had no batteries in it, and was off to begin with. Toys will still randomly go off, since I have a sister now, but more when I was throwing out old toys that batteries were no longer in. There was an Elmo in a garbage bag that was going to be thrown out, and it randomly went off and said, "Tickle me, Elmo, hee!" It just creeps me out to think about it. I got some balloons from someone on Valentine's Day. They were sitting in my room for a while, but were still pretty filled. My friend had come over to stay the night. As we were talking that night, the balloon had been tugged down and almost hit the floor. We were both so creeped out. I had moved over on the other side of her since I was getting weird vibes, until we heard a tap on the window. I looked at her and said, "Did you hear that?" And it was so sad to hear the words, "Yes," fall out of her mouth. I wouldn't have been so scared, but there is no possible way there could have been someone just there. I live on the 3rd floor, and it had to have been a little past midnight. The rest of the night, having constant footsteps in the room over, and nobody is up in my house past midnight. The strangest thing is that my friend woke up the next morning with fingerprint-like marks on her arm that had bruised. It was a scary night for the both of us. There was another night that always seemed to scare me to even think about. My friend had stayed over that night, and we were up, pulling an all-nighter. We kept hearing the occasional footsteps, and on and off knocks, but we were trying to ignore it. It rolls around to about 6 a.m. when we started to hear footsteps on the roof. Why the fuck is someone on the roof at 6 a.m.? And who the fuck even got up there? There was no one there. It was stomping, and it sounded like it wanted our attention. My friend and I were terrified, and we were trying to ignore it. We couldn't ignore it anymore. We fucking darted downstairs so fast. The footsteps seemed to run and follow us. We waited in my kitchen till 7 a.m. in the morning, when my mom rolled into the kitchen and asked what in the world we were doing. I told her what had happened, and she was trying to reassure us that it was a squirrel and everything was okay. It was not a squirrel. What fucking squirrel had the footsteps of someone that sounded like an adult up there? She came into the room and checked it out, and it seemed to have calmed down, so she left. We decided it was time to sleep, since we had been exhausted. The footsteps started up again, and we tried to ignore it and went to sleep. I'm going to stop here for now. Might share some more stories afterwards. I would love some feedback. X marks the spot. So around 2002, I was living in Fort Lauderdale. I saw an ad in the paper that 1-800-Flowers was hiring drivers for the Valentine's Day holiday. I got the job. When I showed up, they had a plain white van for me to use for the deliveries. People were gathering around the boss to get their assignments. They were talking about their familiarity with the area and other delivery jobs they had had. I was new to Fort Lauderdale, so I wasn't really familiar with any areas. I just took the bunch that was close to where I lived. I took my stacks of index cards with addresses and my flowers and took off. My deliveries covered quite an area and knew I was gonna need a map. I stopped at a gas station near where I lived, grabbed a book-style map from the rack, then I headed to my apartment, where I looked up the deliveries and got them in order. While getting my deliveries in order, I noticed that on one of the map pages there was an X that someone had drawn in on the map in pen. I thought that was weird, but didn't think too much of it. I took my delivery cards now in order and headed out. I went about the day making my deliveries. I was on my way to one delivery and was having a hard time finding a road that was supposed to be on the map. It was hard to find it. I drove back and forth a couple times just looking for it. But all I saw was a roughly beaten down path or road that looked like it was maybe used by a construction crew of some kind, you know. I figured screw it, and took the road. I drove in a ways, and it turned to the right, which is the way I needed to go to. After a while, I was just riding on a grass road behind a row of houses. I'm thinking, what the hell? I stopped and looked at the map trying to figure out where I was supposed to be. While I was stopped, I saw someone in their driveway. They were either leaving or arriving at their house. I don't quite remember. I got out of the van and started walking their way to just asked for directions, you know? I got to the man and told him I was delivering flowers and was basically pretty lost. I'd gone completely lost, actually. I got out of my map and showed him the address in which I was looking for. As I'm pointing at the map, I noticed the X that I noticed earlier. It seemed to be the exact location at which I was talking to this man. I thought that was pretty weird, and I wonder what this guy might be thinking about. Some stranger parked out in his backyard in a plain white van, approaching him and apparently having his address marked on the map. Fortunately, it wasn't too awkward. He basically told me where I needed to go, and I was on my way. I seem to experience a lot of coincidences in my whole entire lifetime, but that was definitely one of the most unique and one of the most, well, in which I can say, since we are at the subreddit anyways, one of the most in my whole life glitched in the Matrix. Thank you guys for reading and hope you guys have a great day. P.S. I hope you don't have experience like mine, because sometimes it can get pretty confusing and wastes a lot of time too.